Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Win conditions, London Spitfire edition. So, London Spitfire are the team hunting down the playoffs that are rubbing their hands, looking at everyone else's schedule, looking at their schedule and thinking, oh boy, let's do this. Now, why do I say that? You look at the teams around them, Hangzhou Spark, Los Angeles Gladiators, Seoul Dynasty, the Shanghai Dragons. They are playing each other, like they are all playing each other. They are all probably going to drop at least one game this stage. If not two. London, they've had a really bad stage 3. They lost twice to the NYXL, and they lost to the Valiant as well, I believe. And the thing is, they were quite heavy losses. And they also lost heavily to the San Francisco Shock. 3 4-0s in that stage have cost them the map differential advantage that they had, and have also cost them the place in the playoffs they've had for quite a while. So, London have work to do. But you look at their stage 4 and you're thinking, well, there is work that they can do. Now, their week 1 consists of the games against the Dallas Fuel and Toronto Defiant. You have to say that they're extremely winnable for the London Spitfire. Compare that to other teams that are taking on more difficult opponents, you could already see London Spitfire back in the playoff places at the end of week 1. Then you look at their week 2, and they take on the Guangzhou Charge and the Florida Mayhem. Well, they're 2 winnable, very winnable games for London Spitfire as well. So all of a sudden you're looking at London being 4-0 at the end of 2 weeks, and probably back in the playoffs places, not far behind Hangzhou Spark, I wouldn't have thought. Week 3 is where it gets slightly tougher for London. They have to play the Vancouver Titans, a team they've never played basically. And also they will play an informed Houston Outlaws. Who knows what the Houston Outlaws will be doing by then, but on what we currently know, it's an informed Houston Outlaws. So week 3 is their most difficult week of the stage. But to be quite honest, if they lose those 2 games, it's not the end of the world for Spitfire. It's not the end of the world. But the best case scenario, I think, for Spitfire is to lose one of those games, obviously to the Vancouver Titans. They should be able to get past the Houston Outlaws, but who knows. And in week 4, they will play the Atlanta Reign. Now, the Atlanta Reign might well know by then whether they are in the play-ins or not, so it might not have too much meaning that game. But Spitfire, that's another extremely winnable game. They don't play in the Kit Kat rivalry weekend. So, you look at London Spitfire's schedule for Stage 4, and you say this is entirely a schedule where the Spitfire could go 6-1. With the only loss perhaps coming against the Titans. If Spitfire can gain the consistency that they showed in Stage 2, you'd have to expect that to happen. And that puts London Spitfire in pole position to seal up a playoff spot, even though they are outside of those playoffs right now. Because of the fact that the other teams around them are all playing each other. London have the easiest run-in terms of Stage 4 fixtures, out of the top teams. And I'm talking about Philadelphia Fusion upwards. They have the easiest stage. And it's probably the easiest stage of their season so far. So, another thing to take into account for the Spitfire is a possible meta change. Now, we know that the Spitfire aren't terribly comfortable on GOATs. They've kind of got used to it. And they're certainly looking iffy on the Sombra 3-2-1. The thing is, if we get a 2-2 roll lock, that plays into the Spitfire's hands. They get to bring out Birdring and Prophet on the heroes they love to play. The Widowmaker, the McCree, the Pharah, the Genji maybe, the Tracer. And all of a sudden you see Spitfire playing the way they want to play. Jester gets to go back to playing more Orisa and more Winston, which is his forte rather than the Reinhardt. Fury gets to play his best hero, and arguably he is the best player at the hero in the league, D.Va. So you know. But you see that sort of on paper right now, the stars are aligning for London Spitfire to have a really good stage. Now, the problem is London do show us inconsistencies. Now, if we don't have a 2-2 roll lock, that could provide for some anomalies in terms of the results that we might see in Stage 4 for London. They might struggle against Guangzhou Charge, they might struggle against Houston Outlaws. But I still think London should be able to pull through. I know London, they will probably do it by the skin of their teeth like they did last year. But this stage is so favourable to London it is ridiculous. Especially if we go into a 2-2 roll lock. Now, there's another thing to think of, and that's the Atlantic Division. It's extremely unlikely that London can catch the Excelsior. Purely because London lost the 2 games to Excelsior in Stage 3. And that has given Excelsior such a lead now where they really shouldn't be catchable. If Excelsior lose 7 games this stage, and that means a winless stage for the Excelsior, I would eat my hat. So I don't think it's possible for London to reach the number 1 spot in the Atlantic Division. But I think it's feasible for London to perhaps get 4th and sneak in above the Hangzhou Spark. It would be something, and it would be interesting, to say the least. But you look at the Hangzhou Spark schedule, you look at the Gladiator schedule and the Dynasty schedule, they're not easy. They're going to drop games. So it is possible for London to do that. Although I think a more realistic aim for London is 5th. I think 5th is definitely attainable for London. And that would give them a decent, I suppose, a decent ranking in the playoffs. They would be ahead of the likes of whoever finishes 6th, of the 2 teams that come through the play-ins. But really, and I know it seems weird to say this considering they're not in the playoffs right now, or the automatic playoff places anyway, the cards are kind of in Spitfire's hands. When you look at the schedules, the cards really do fall into the Spitfire's hands, with the difficult games that Seoul, Gladiator, Spark, Dragons have got. So, the question I ask Spitfire is, can you make the most of the good situation? That's the question here. You've got most of your most difficult games out of the way. The most difficult game you will face, by far, is the Vancouver Titans this stage. And it really doesn't matter if you lose to them. But you have to, as a Spitfire, if you're a Spitfire fan or whatever, you have to be looking at it and saying, look, a 6-1 stage is entirely attainable here. A 5th or 4th place spot in the league is really, really doable. Spitfire have to knuckle down and make sure they get the job done. And we will see whether that happens. But those have been your win conditions for the London Spitfire, your current champions of the league, remember? Next up will be the Shanghai Dragons, another team on the outside looking in, but part of that chasing pack on an equal record with London Spitfire, remember, on 12-9. Although records at the moment for these teams doesn't mean too much because they are so darn close. Shanghai Dragons, another interesting team and a team that have another difficult stage. But I'm going to leave it here for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.